So, if you have been watching, you've seen that I started talking about this idea of our view of our own value and how it impacts conflict, how it impacts relationships. And I was talking with a client today and was talking about how what he is feeling about himself is what's actually driving his reactions. So I want to talk today. I did a few days ago. I talked about the area of um, value, and I was talking then about the area of less value. So when you view yourself as less valuable than your spouse, what does that do? So today I want to talk about more value. When you view yourself as more valuable than your spouse, what difference does that make? So here are a couple of things, a couple of principles that you can see when you look at more value. So when you view yourself as more valuable than your spouse, this what I'm talking about is when you're in the conflict or you're in the conversation or you're in the discussion, whatever you want to call it. It can be a heated exchange or just a general discussion. If you come into that when you viewing yourself as more valuable, just as a human being, more valuable, you're going to experience these kinds of attitudes: superiority, anger, frustration, impatience, belittling, condescension, entitlement, and contempt. Now, not all of those, and not all of those every time, but some form of those is going to come through as you experience that conflict, because you're coming into it with an attitude that says, I am more valuable than she is. And so that's why you end up belittling or condescending as you go into that. So some of the common causes for this kind of a value, and if you're watching these series of videos, you'll see that I talk about the FOO a lot, which is your family of origin. So some of the common causes of this are your upbringing. How were you raised? Some families had a higher value, some had a lower value. Some families were sort of, we're better than everybody else. Some families the opposite. So your family of origin had an impact on this. Secondly, trauma can have an impact on this. Your workplace, how you're treated there, or your position there. If you live with self-hate, and that's a whole nother area, projection onto them of somebody else that you are dealing with, typically culture, personal failure, and devaluing. So I know I'm rushing through this. It's really meant to be just an overview and an introduction. So what do you do if you are a person who lives with this reality and tends to treat your wife or your spouse or your friends as if they are less valuable than you, that you're more valuable? So in a marriage, number one key, and that is, if you want to know if this is your value, if you want to know that this is how you view your value, ask her, because she knows. She feels the condescension. She feels belittled. She feels like you're talking down to her. Now, you might say, well, how do I know this? Well, because I have operated in this value sometimes, and my wife has told me, especially as I've become more open, she's told me how it feels. Another thing that you can do is listen to your tone. What do I mean by that? I mean that when you're in the conversation, think about this. Is there any other person who I would speak to this way? In other words, if I was at work, if I was out to lunch with somebody, if I was with a friend, would I speak with this tone? That's a good gauge of whether you have entered into viewing your value as more than her. If your tone says, I wouldn't speak to anybody else this way. A third one is, be aware of workplace frustrations. If you're being overrun at work, or if you are not being listened to, you may come home and say, man, I'm going to get my value here. So you can use that as an excuse to put more value on yourself. And then the final thing that I encourage everybody to do is to keep a journal. Journal is a way of just thinking, how did I do? How did I relate? What happened in that relationship? So there are just a couple of things about more value and how you can work at that. And if you'd like to know more, if you'd like some more information on this, I actually have a pamphlet. It's called The 4 Views of Value, and you can get it from the link down here. And I'd be happy to connect with you if you want to talk more about it. But the 4 Views of Value. I also have a tool on my website called Stop, Drop, and Roll. I'll put a link for that down here as well. and you can have both of those. Those are just free because I really want to help as many men as I can. So if you feel like this would be helpful, like it and share it. If you feel like it would be helpful, download the resources. And if you'd like to connect, give me a message. Email me at kevin@nextcoaches.com, and would love to just talk with you. If you know somebody else who's struggling with conflict, with reactions in their marriage, would be really happy and grateful if you would pass this on. So that's what I have to share today, and I'm going to come back the next time and talk about what it looks like to have an equal value of the person you're in conflict with, but you're protecting yourself. So that'll be our next time. All right, have a good day.